Deep in the heart of the Sahara Desert, where endless dunes stretch beyond the horizon and the sun beats down mercilessly on a landscape that seems utterly lifeless, satellite images reveal something that shouldn't exist. A perfect circle, 40 miles across, etched into the Earth's surface with geometric precision that defies natural explanation. The locals call it the Eye of Africa. Scientists call it the Richa structure. But what if they're both wrong? What if this mysterious formation, hidden in plain sight for millennia, is actually the remnants of humanity's most legendary lost civilization? Welcome to a mystery that will challenge everything you think you know about our ancient past. I'm here to take you on a journey into one of the most compelling archaeological enigmas of our time, where cutting-edge satellite technology meets ancient legends, where geological anomalies intersect with whispered tales of a civilization so advanced it vanished without a trace. You've heard the name before, Atlantis, that mythical island kingdom described by the Greek philosopher Plato over 2,000 years ago. A civilization of unparalleled sophistication, ringed by concentric circles of water and land, blessed with incredible wealth and technology, until hubris and catastrophe sent it crashing into the depths of the ocean in a single day and night. For centuries, explorers and scholars have scoured the globe, searching for this lost paradise, diving into ocean trenches, excavating Mediterranean islands, chasing shadows across every sea on Earth. But what if they've been looking in the wrong place entirely? Tonight, we're going to explore a theory so audacious, so revolutionary, that it could rewrite the history books. What if Atlantis wasn't swallowed by the sea, but buried by the sand? What if the greatest archaeological discovery in human history has been staring us in the face from space, hidden beneath the shifting dunes of the world's largest desert? The evidence we're about to uncover will leave you questioning not just the location of Atlantis, but the very nature of ancient civilization itself. We'll examine geological formations that seem to mirror Plato's descriptions with uncanny accuracy. We'll investigate archaeological findings that suggest the Sahara was once a lush green paradise, capable of supporting massive populations. And we'll delve into cutting-edge research that's forcing scientists to reconsider everything they thought they knew about this desolate landscape. But this isn't just another treasure hunt for a mythical city. This is about something far more profound. If what we're about to explore is true, then the implications extend far beyond a single lost civilization. We're talking about evidence that could revolutionize our understanding of human history, climate change, and the rise and fall of ancient cultures. The Rishat structure, this mysterious eye in the desert, measures exactly 40 miles in diameter. It's composed of concentric rings of different rock types, creating a bullseye pattern visible from orbit. Mainstream geology tells us it's a natural formation, created by volcanic activity and erosion over millions of years. But here's where things get interesting. The structure's dimensions, its circular perfection, even its geographic location, align with Plato's description of Atlantis in ways that seem too precise to be mere coincidence. Plato wrote that Atlantis was located beyond the Pillars of Hercules, in a region that was once fertile and green. He described it as having concentric rings of water and land, with the central island measuring approximately 40 miles across. The capital city, he claimed, was situated on this central island, surrounded by alternating rings of water and earth that served both defensive and agricultural purposes. Now, imagine looking down at the Risha structure from space. You see perfect concentric circles, alternating bands of different geological materials, all centered around an elevated plateau that rises from the surrounding terrain like an ancient island. The outer rings stretch exactly the distance Plato specified. The formation sits in what was once the heart of a vast prehistoric lake system, in a region that geological evidence confirms was green and fertile when Plato claimed Atlantis flourished. This isn't just about matching measurements on a map. The deeper you dig into the geological history of this region, the more the pieces of this incredible puzzle begin to fit together. Core samples from across the Sahara reveal that between roughly 12,000 and 4,000 years ago, this entire region experienced what scientists call the African humid period. Rivers flowed where now there is only sand. Lakes the size of seas dotted the landscape. Grasslands and forests supported elephants, hippos, crocodiles, and thriving human communities. Archaeological evidence from across the Sahara tells the story of sophisticated cultures that called this green paradise home. Rock art dating back thousands of years depicts not the harsh desert we see today, but a land of plenty. Cattle herders, skilled craftsmen, and complex societies flourished in what is now one of Earth's most inhospitable environments. Then, around 4,000 years ago, the climate shifted dramatically. The rains stopped, the rivers dried up, the forests died, and the desert reclaimed everything. But here's what makes the Rishat structure so extraordinary. While other archaeological sites across the Sahara have been buried beneath centuries of sand accumulation, this formation remains clearly visible. Its elevated position and unique geological composition have protected it from complete burial, preserving what might be the most important archaeological site in human history. Recent advances in ground-penetrating radar and satellite imaging have revealed even more intriguing details. Beneath the surface of the Rishat structure, researchers have detected what appear to be geometric patterns, regular formations that don't match natural geological processes. These subsurface anomalies suggest the presence of artificial structures, possibly the remnants of ancient construction, buried beneath millennia of sediment. The implications are staggering. If these formations are indeed artificial, if they represent the remains of a sophisticated ancient civilization, then we're not just looking at another archaeological site. We're potentially looking at the birthplace of human civilization as we know it, the source of the technologies and knowledge that would later spread across the ancient world. Think about it. Every ancient culture on Earth has flood myths, stories of a great civilization that was destroyed by water and catastrophe. The Mesopotamians had their Epic of Gilgamesh. The Hebrews had Noah and the Ark. The Greeks had Deucalion's flood. Hindu texts speak of cosmic cycles of destruction and renewal. Native American tribes across the continent tell of great floods that reshaped the world. What if these aren't separate myths, but cultural memories of the same cataclysmic event? What if they're all remembering the end of the African humid period, when the life-giving rain stopped and the great civilization of the Green Sahara was swallowed not by the sea, but by the advancing desert? What if the survivors of this catastrophe spread across the world, carrying with them the knowledge and stories of their lost homeland, seeding the great civilizations that would follow? The timing fits perfectly. The end of the African humid period coincides with the rise of complex civilizations across the globe. Egypt, Mesopotamia, the Indus Valley, all emerged in the aftermath of this great climate shift. These weren't independent developments, but the flowering of knowledge and technology carried by refugees from a dying land. This isn't speculation anymore. It's a theory supported by a growing body of evidence that mainstream archaeology is only just beginning to acknowledge. The Sahara wasn't always a desert. It was once the cradle of a sophisticated civilization that may have been the template for every great society that followed. And the Rishat structure, the Eye of Africa, might be all that remains visible of humanity's greatest lost city. But the story doesn't end with climate change and migration. The more researchers study the Rishat structure, the more questions arise about the level of sophistication achieved by its ancient inhabitants. The precision of the circular formation, the complex geology of the concentric rings, the strategic location at the heart of what was once a vast river system, all suggest a level of engineering and planning that challenges our assumptions about prehistoric capabilities. Some researchers have noted that the structure's rings contain different mineral compositions, as if they were deliberately constructed using materials selected for specific properties. Others have pointed out that the formation's perfect circular geometry would have required advanced surveying techniques and mathematical knowledge. Still, others have observed that the site's elevation and central location would have made it an ideal hub for trade and communication across the prehistoric Sahara. These aren't the characteristics of a simple hunter-gatherer society. This is evidence of a civilization with advanced knowledge of engineering, mathematics, astronomy, and urban planning. A civilization sophisticated enough to construct a city that would serve as the template for Plato's description of Atlantis, written thousands of years after the desert had claimed everything else. The implications extend far beyond archaeology. If the Sahara's Atlantis theory is correct, it means that human civilization is far older and more sophisticated than we've been taught. It means that the rise of complex societies wasn't a gradual process that began in Mesopotamia 5,000 years ago, but a recovery from an even greater civilization that flourished and fell in prehistoric times. It means that the knowledge that built the pyramids, that created the first writing systems, that established the first cities, might not have been invented by the Egyptians or Sumerians, but inherited from an even older source. The refugees from the dying Sahara, carrying with them the accumulated wisdom of their lost civilization, might have been the true founders of recorded history. This is more than just a theory about a lost city. This is a complete reimagining of human history, one that places Africa at the center of our species' greatest achievements. The cradle of civilization wasn't in the fertile crescent of Mesopotamia, but in the green heart of Africa, in a land that time and climate have transformed beyond recognition. And if this is true, if the Eye of Africa really is the remains of Atlantis, then we're not just looking at the greatest archaeological discovery of our time. We're looking at proof that our ancestors achieved heights of civilization that we're only now beginning to understand, and that the stories we've dismissed as myths might actually be the last echoes of our species' greatest triumph. The desert keeps its secrets well, but satellite technology and modern archaeology are finally giving us the tools to uncover them. What we're finding beneath the sand is forcing us to reconsider everything we thought we knew about the past, and raising profound questions about what other mysteries might be hidden in plain sight, waiting for us to develop the vision to see them. The evidence hidden within the geological layers of the Risha structure tells a story that grows more compelling with each new discovery. When geologists first studied this formation, they assumed they were looking at the result of volcanic activity, erosion patterns carved over millions of years by wind and water. But recent analysis has revealed something far more intriguing. The rock formations don't match the expected patterns of natural geological processes. Instead, they show signs of artificial modification, deliberate shaping that suggests human intervention on a massive scale. Dr. Robert Schoch, the geologist who revolutionized our understanding of the Sphinx by proving it was carved during a much wetter climate period, has turned his attention to the Sahara. His preliminary findings are nothing short of extraordinary. Core samples taken from various points within the Risha structure reveal layers of sediment that don't align with natural deposition patterns. There are gaps in the geological record, missing layers that should be there if this were purely a natural formation. More intriguingly, there are artificial materials embedded within the rock layers, traces of worked stone and metal alloys that have no business being there if this is just a geological curiosity. But it's not just what's in the rocks that's fascinating, it's what's missing. Traditional geological formations show clear evidence of the processes that created them. You can read the story of volcanic eruptions, glacial movements, and erosion patterns like pages in a book. The Risha structure's geological signature is different. It's been scrubbed clean in places, as if someone deliberately tried to erase the evidence of what happened here. Ground-penetrating radar surveys conducted over the past decade have revealed an underground landscape that defies explanation. Beneath the visible rings of the structure lies a network of what appear to be artificial channels, geometric patterns that extend deep into the bedrock. These aren't natural cave systems or erosion patterns. They're too regular, too purposeful. They look like the remains of an ancient infrastructure system, possibly for water management or transportation. The implications become even more staggering when you consider the structure's relationship to water. Hydrological studies of the region reveal that during the African humid period, the Richet structure sat at the center of a vast river delta system. Multiple waterways converged at this exact location, creating a natural harbor in what was essentially an inland sea. The concentric rings of the structure would have created natural barriers and channels, perfect for managing water flow and creating the alternating rings of water and land that Plato described. But here's where the story takes an even more dramatic turn. Recent satellite analysis using advanced spectral imaging has revealed something that changes everything. Buried beneath the sand around the Richet structure are the faint outlines of what appear to be massive geometric patterns. These aren't visible to the naked eye, but they show up clearly in certain wavelengths of light. The patterns extend for miles in every direction from the central structure, suggesting that what we can see today is just the tip of an enormous archaeological iceberg. These buried patterns aren't random. They show clear evidence of urban planning on a scale that rivals modern cities. There are what appear to be street grids, large rectangular structures that could be buildings or public spaces, and a complex network of channels that would have managed water flow throughout the entire complex. The level of organization and planning evident in these patterns suggests a civilization with sophisticated knowledge of engineering, mathematics, and urban design. The dating of these features presents another puzzle that supports the Atlantis theory. Using a combination of techniques including luminescence dating of buried quartz grains and analysis of sediment layers, researchers have established that these patterns were covered by sand approximately 4,000 years ago. This timing corresponds exactly with the end of the African humid period and matches Plato's timeline for the destruction of Atlantis. What makes this timing even more significant is its correlation with major changes in civilizations around the world. The period around 2000 BCE was marked by dramatic shifts in human societies across the globe. The Old Kingdom of Egypt collapsed. The Indus Valley civilization mysteriously disappeared. The Akkadian Empire in Mesopotamia fell to invasion and drought. Bronze Age cultures across the Mediterranean went into decline. What if these weren't separate events, but all connected to the same catastrophic climate change that buried the Sahara's Atlantis? The refugee theory gains even more credibility when you examine the sudden technological advances that appeared in civilizations around the world following this period. Complex astronomical knowledge, advanced metallurgy, sophisticated architectural techniques, and mathematical concepts all seem to emerge simultaneously in cultures that had previously shown no evidence of such capabilities. This looks less like independent invention and more like the spread of existing knowledge by people fleeing a dying homeland. Archaeological evidence from across North Africa supports this migration theory. Sites along what would have been the escape routes from the Central Sahara show sudden population increases around 2000 BCE, followed by the appearance of new technologies and cultural practices. Rock art from this period depicts people in boats, carrying what appear to be precious objects and livestock, moving away from areas that were becoming desert. The genetic evidence is equally compelling. Recent DNA studies of populations across North Africa and the Mediterranean reveal genetic markers that trace back to a common source in the Central Sahara region. These markers appear in populations as far away as the Atlantic coast of Europe and the highlands of Ethiopia, suggesting a massive dispersal of people from the Sahara region around 4,000 years ago. But perhaps the most intriguing evidence comes from linguistic analysis. Researchers studying the evolution of language have identified what they call a Saharan substrate in languages across North Africa and the Mediterranean. These are linguistic elements that don't fit the normal patterns of language evolution, suggesting they were borrowed from an older, more sophisticated language that has since been lost. The geographic distribution of these linguistic elements centers on the Riche structure region and radiates outward, exactly what you would expect if refugees from this area had spread their language across the ancient world. The astronomical alignments of the Riche structure provide another layer of evidence for its artificial origin. The structure's rings aren't just randomly oriented. They align with specific celestial events that would have been significant to ancient astronomers. The outer ring aligns with the winter solstice sunrise, while inner features correspond to the positions of various stars and constellations as they appeared 4,000 years ago. This astronomical precision suggests that whoever built this structure possessed advanced knowledge of celestial mechanics and had the mathematical skills to encode this knowledge in stone. Such sophistication fits perfectly with Plato's description of the Atlanteans as master astronomers and mathematicians, people who understood the movements of the heavens and incorporated this knowledge into their architecture. The mineral wealth of the region adds another piece to the puzzle. The rocks within and around the Riche structure contain unusual concentrations of rare earth elements, precious metals, and exotic minerals. Some of these materials don't occur naturally in this region and would have had to be imported from great distances. This suggests a civilization with extensive trade networks and the resources to acquire materials from across the ancient world. Plato described Atlantis as incredibly wealthy, rich in gold, silver, and exotic metals. The mineral signature of the Riche structure region matches this description remarkably well. More intriguingly, analysis of metal artifacts found at archaeological sites across the ancient world reveals trace elements that match the unique mineral signature of the Sahara region, suggesting that this area was indeed a major source of precious materials for ancient civilizations. The agricultural potential of the region during its green period would have supported the large population that Plato attributed to Atlantis. Paleoenvironmental studies reveal that the Sahara during the humid period was incredibly fertile, with vast grasslands, forests, and lake systems that could have supported millions of people. The soil composition in areas around the Riche structure shows evidence of ancient agriculture, including traces of crops that were later cultivated in Egypt and Mesopotamia. This agricultural abundance would have been the foundation for the sophisticated civilization that built the structure. With food security ensured by the region's natural fertility, the population would have been free to develop the arts, sciences, and technologies that characterize advanced civilizations. The sudden end of this agricultural paradise would have forced a massive migration, spreading this accumulated knowledge across the ancient world. The water management systems revealed by ground-penetrating radar suggest a level of hydraulic engineering that rivals modern capabilities. The network of channels and reservoirs would have allowed the inhabitants to control water flow throughout their territory, maximizing agricultural productivity and managing the seasonal variations in rainfall. When the climate began to change and rainfall became less reliable, these systems would have allowed the civilization to survive longer than it otherwise could have, buying time for the Great Migration that followed. But even the most sophisticated water management couldn't save them from the ultimate catastrophe. Climate data from ice cores and lake sediments reveals that the end of the African humid period wasn't gradual. It happened with shocking speed. Within a few decades, the rain stopped, the rivers dried up, and the desert began its inexorable advance. The great civilization of the Green Sahara had no choice but to abandon their homeland or perish with it. The scale of this climate catastrophe is difficult to comprehend. An area larger than the continental United States transformed from a lush green paradise into the world's largest desert in less than a human lifetime. Entire ecosystems vanished. Rivers that had flowed for thousands of years became dry wadis. Lakes that had supported vast populations evaporated into salt flats. The environmental refugees from this disaster would have numbered in the millions, carrying with them the accumulated knowledge and culture of one of humanity's greatest civilizations. This mass migration explains so many mysteries of ancient history: the sudden appearance of advanced agricultural techniques in Egypt, the sophisticated astronomical knowledge of early Mesopotamian civilizations, the complex mathematical concepts that appeared simultaneously in cultures across the ancient world. These weren't independent discoveries, but the inheritance of refugees from a dying land, the last gift of the Sahara's Atlantis to the world that would forget its very existence. The Rishat structure stands today as a monument to this lost world, a geological fossil of humanity's greatest prehistoric achievement. Hidden in plain sight beneath the endless dunes of the Sahara, it waits for us to develop the technology and wisdom to unlock its secrets. Each new discovery brings us closer to understanding not just what happened here, but what it means for our understanding of human civilization itself. We're not just looking at the remains of a lost city. We're looking at the birthplace of recorded history, the source of the technologies and knowledge that built the ancient world. The refugees from this dying paradise didn't just survive. They thrived, founding the great civilizations that we study today, carrying with them the memory of their lost homeland in the stories and myths that have echoed through history. The implications extend far beyond archaeology and ancient history. If the Sahara's Atlantis theory is correct, it demonstrates the incredible fragility of even the most advanced civilizations in the face of climate change. It shows us that environmental catastrophe can strike with devastating speed, transforming paradise into wasteland in a single generation. And it reminds us that the knowledge and achievements of an entire civilization can be lost forever if we don't take steps to preserve them. But perhaps most importantly, it challenges us to reconsider our assumptions about the past and our place in the long arc of human history. We are not the first civilization to achieve great heights of knowledge and technology. We are not the first to face the challenge of environmental change. And we are certainly not the first to believe that our achievements are permanent and unshakable. The Eye of Africa watches us from the heart of the desert, a silent witness to the rise and fall of human ambition. Its concentric rings tell a story of triumph and catastrophe, of knowledge gained and lost, of civilizations that thought they would last forever, but fell to forces beyond their control. It's a story that every generation needs to hear, especially our own. The deeper we excavate into this mystery, the more the conventional narrative of human civilization begins to crumble. Because what we're uncovering in the Sahara isn't just challenging our understanding of one lost city. It's forcing us to confront the possibility that everything we've been taught about the development of human society is fundamentally wrong. Consider this. Mainstream archaeology tells us that complex civilization began around 5,000 years ago in Mesopotamia. That writing was invented by the Sumerians. That monumental architecture started with the pyramids. That advanced mathematics emerged gradually over centuries of slow development. But what if all of these achievements weren't inventions at all? What if they were reconstructions, desperate attempts by survivors to rebuild what had been lost when the Green Sahara died? The evidence scattered across the ancient world suddenly makes sense when viewed through this lens. The mysterious appearance of fully formed writing systems with no apparent precursors. The sudden emergence of sophisticated astronomical knowledge in cultures that supposedly had no previous experience with complex mathematics. The uncanny similarities between architectural techniques used by civilizations separated by thousands of miles and centuries of time. Recent analysis of ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs has revealed something extraordinary. Hidden within the earliest texts are references to a homeland in the West, a place of great waters and circular cities that was lost to the advancing desert. These aren't metaphorical descriptions of the afterlife. They're geographical references to a real place, described with the kind of specific detail that suggests personal memory rather than mythological imagination. The pyramid texts, some of the oldest religious writings in human history, speak of the primordial mound that emerged from the waters of chaos, the first land where the gods established their kingdom. Modern Egyptologists have always interpreted this as purely symbolic. But what if it's actually a cultural memory of the central island of the Rishat structure, rising from the prehistoric lake system that once covered this region? The architectural parallels are even more striking. The step pyramid of Djoser, the first monumental stone building in recorded history, shares remarkable similarities with the terrace structure revealed by ground-penetrating radar beneath the Rishat formation. The same concentric design, the same careful attention to astronomical alignment, the same sophisticated understanding of how to work with massive stone blocks. But it's not just Egypt. Similar patterns emerge when you examine the foundational myths and architectural achievements of civilizations across the ancient world. The Mesopotamian epic of Gilgamesh describes Uruk as a city of circular walls, built according to divine specifications that match the proportions of the Rishat structure with startling precision. The ancient Indian texts known as the Puranas describe the primordial city of the gods as having 7 concentric islands, separated by rings of water, in a configuration that perfectly matches both Plato's Atlantis and the geological structure we see in the Sahara today. These aren't coincidences. They're cultural memories, passed down through generations of storytellers, preserving the knowledge of a homeland that no longer existed by the time these stories were first written down. The refugees from the dying Sahara carried these memories with them, and they became the foundation myths of every great civilization that followed. The technological evidence is equally compelling. Metallurgical analysis of ancient bronze artifacts from across the Mediterranean reveals trace elements that can only have come from ore deposits in the central Sahara region. This suggests not just trade relationships, but a sophisticated understanding of metallurgy that was developed in the Sahara and then spread by migrating populations to their new homes. The mathematical knowledge embedded in ancient architectural achievements shows similar patterns. The golden ratio, the precise calculations needed for pyramid construction, the complex astronomical alignments found in megalithic sites across Europe and Asia, all of these mathematical concepts appear suddenly in the archaeological record around 4,000 years ago, with no apparent period of development or experimentation. This is the signature of inherited knowledge, not invented knowledge. It's what you would expect to see if a sophisticated civilization had suddenly been forced to abandon their homeland and rebuild their achievements from memory in new locations across the ancient world. The linguistic evidence provides another crucial piece of this puzzle. Comparative analysis of ancient languages reveals a common substrate, a set of root words and grammatical structures that appear in languages across North Africa, the Mediterranean, and the Middle East. These linguistic elements don't fit the normal patterns of language evolution and borrowing. Instead, they suggest a common origin, a mother tongue that was spoken by the refugees from the Sahara as they spread across the ancient world. This proto-language has left its fingerprints in the most sacred and technical vocabularies of ancient civilizations. Words related to astronomy, mathematics, architecture, and metallurgy show remarkable similarities across cultures that supposedly had no contact with each other. It's as if the specialists and knowledge keepers from the Saharan civilization carried their technical vocabulary with them, and it became embedded in the specialized knowledge of their new homes. The religious and mythological parallels are perhaps the most profound evidence of all. Every ancient culture has stories of a golden age, a time when gods walked among humans and taught them the arts of civilization. These stories all share common elements: a paradise lost to catastrophe, divine teachers who brought knowledge and law, and the promise that this golden age will one day return. What if these aren't separate mythological traditions, but fragments of the same historical memory? What if the gods of ancient mythology weren't supernatural beings at all, but the last generation of the Saharan civilization, the knowledge keepers and leaders who guided the Great Migration and established new settlements across the ancient world? The timing of these myths aligns perfectly with the end of the African humid period. The Egyptian god Thoth, who brought writing and mathematics to humanity. The Mesopotamian Oans, who emerged from the waters to teach civilization to primitive humans. The Greek Prometheus, who stole fire from the gods to give to mankind. All of these figures appear in mythological traditions that date to approximately 4,000 years ago, exactly when the Sahara was transforming from paradise to desert. But perhaps the most compelling evidence comes from the ocean itself. Recent marine archaeology has revealed something extraordinary on the floor of the Atlantic Ocean, directly west of the Richat structure. Sonar mapping has identified what appear to be artificial structures, geometric formations that don't match any known geological processes. These formations lie at depths that would have been dry land during the last ice age, when sea levels were hundreds of feet lower than they are today. Could these be the remains of Atlantean settlements built during an even earlier period when the civilization was expanding beyond the Sahara? The dating is tantalizing. These structures would have been submerged around 12,000 years ago, during the massive flooding that marked the end of the last ice age. This matches Plato's timeline for Atlantis perfectly, and it suggests that the civilization we're tracking had multiple phases of development and expansion. The implications are staggering. We're not just looking at a single lost city, but evidence of a vast prehistoric civilization that spanned continents and left its mark on human development in ways we're only beginning to understand. The Richat structure isn't just the remains of Atlantis. It's the capital of a lost world, the center of a network of cities and settlements that stretched from the Atlantic coast to the heart of Africa. This civilization didn't just influence the development of later cultures, it was the foundation upon which all subsequent human achievement was built. The knowledge that built the pyramids, the mathematics that guided ancient astronomers, the agricultural techniques that fed the first cities, the metallurgical skills that launched the Bronze Age, all of it traces back to this common source in the Green Sahara. The catastrophe that ended this golden age wasn't just a local climate change. It was a global transformation that reshaped human civilization. The survivors didn't just carry their knowledge to new lands. They became the teachers and leaders of the cultures that rose from the ashes of their lost world. They were the mysterious sea peoples who appeared suddenly in the eastern Mediterranean. They were the divine kings who founded the first dynasties of Egypt and Mesopotamia. They were the culture bringers whose memories became the foundation myths of every great civilization. And now, 4,000 years later, we're finally developing the technology to see what they left behind. Satellite imagery is revealing the extent of their achievements. Ground-penetrating radar is mapping their buried cities. Genetic analysis is tracing the paths of their migrations. We're not just uncovering archaeological sites. We're reconstructing the greatest untold story in human history. The desert that buried their cities has preserved them better than any museum. Beneath the sand lies a complete record of humanity's first great civilization, waiting for us to develop the wisdom and technology to unlock its secrets. Every grain of sand that covers the Richat structure is like a page in a book, preserving the story of our species' greatest achievement and most devastating loss. But this story isn't just about the past, it's about the future. The climate catastrophe that destroyed the Saharan civilization was driven by the same kinds of environmental changes that we're witnessing today. Rising temperatures, shifting weather patterns, The transformation of fertile lands into desert, the mass migration of environmental refugees. The past is prologue, and the story of Atlantis is our story too. The survivors of the Saharan catastrophe rebuilt their world from memory and determination. They didn't let the loss of their homeland mean the loss of their knowledge. They adapted, they innovated, they preserved what they could, and reinvented what they had to. They didn't just survive, they thrived, creating new civilizations that surpassed even their original achievements. Their legacy isn't just in the monuments they built or the knowledge they preserved, it's in the example they set. They showed us that even the greatest catastrophes can be survived, that knowledge can be preserved, even when entire worlds are lost, that human ingenuity and determination can overcome even the most devastating challenges. The Eye of Africa has been watching us for 4,000 years, waiting for us to develop the vision to see what it really is. Now that we're finally beginning to understand, the question isn't just what we can learn from this lost civilization, it's what we're going to do with that knowledge. Are we going to repeat the mistakes that led to their downfall, or are we going to learn from their example and build a civilization that can survive whatever challenges the future might bring? The answer to that question will determine whether the Sahara's Atlantis remains a monument to human achievement or becomes a warning of human folly. The choice is ours, but the clock is ticking, and the desert is patient. It has already claimed one great civilization. It's waiting to see what we'll make of the second chance we've been given. The investigation continues, and with each passing day, new evidence emerges that confirms what many researchers are now beginning to accept. The greatest archaeological discovery in human history has been hiding in plain sight, waiting for us to develop the technology and wisdom to recognize it for what it truly is. The Sahara's Atlantis isn't just a theory anymore. It's a reality that's forcing us to rewrite the entire story of human civilization. The story becomes even more extraordinary when we examine what happened to the knowledge itself. Because here's what mainstream archaeology doesn't want you to know. The sudden appearance of advanced civilizations around the world wasn't gradual evolution. It was reconstruction. These weren't primitive peoples slowly discovering fire and agriculture. These were the inheritors of a sophisticated knowledge system, desperately trying to rebuild what their ancestors had perfected in the Green Sahara. Think about it. The Great Pyramid of Giza appears in the archaeological record with no prototype, no failed attempts, no learning curve. It's architecturally perfect from day one. The mathematics are flawless. The astronomical alignments are precise to fractions of degrees. This isn't what invention looks like. This is what reconstruction from memory looks like. The builders weren't experimenting. They were remembering. The same pattern repeats across the ancient world. Stonehenge's massive trilithons, positioned with astronomical precision that requires centuries of observation to achieve. The megalithic temples of Malta, built with techniques that wouldn't be seen again until the Renaissance. The sophisticated bronze-working cultures that appeared simultaneously across Europe, with no apparent period of technological development. These weren't independent inventions happening by coincidence. They were the scattered fragments of a single, coherent knowledge system, preserved and transmitted by the survivors of the Saharan catastrophe. Each new settlement tried to recreate what they remembered from their lost homeland, adapting ancient techniques to new environments and available materials. Recent analysis of construction techniques used in these ancient sites reveals something remarkable. Despite being separated by thousands of miles and supposedly built by unrelated cultures, they share identical approaches to problems that should have required independent solutions. The method for calculating load-bearing capacity in megalithic construction, the technique for achieving precise astronomical alignments without modern instruments, the system for organizing massive construction projects requiring thousands of workers. These technical similarities aren't coincidental. They're the signature of a shared educational system, a common body of knowledge that was passed down through the generations of refugees who spread across the ancient world. It's as if there was an ancient university system, and the Rishat structure was its central campus. The linguistic evidence for this knowledge transfer is overwhelming when you know where to look. Hidden within the technical vocabularies of ancient civilizations are word roots that don't belong to their language families. Terms for advanced mathematical concepts, astronomical phenomena, and engineering techniques that appear to be borrowed from an older, more sophisticated source language. Computer analysis of these linguistic anomalies has revealed something extraordinary. When you map the distribution of these borrowed technical terms, they form a clear pattern radiating outward from the central Sahara region. The concentration is highest in cultures closest to the Rishat structure and decreases with distance. Exactly what you would expect if knowledge was being transmitted by migrating populations carrying their expertise to new lands. But it's not just technical knowledge that was preserved. The survivors carried with them a complete worldview, a sophisticated understanding of humanity's place in the cosmos that became embedded in the religious and philosophical systems of every culture they influenced. The concept of cyclical time, the understanding of precession and long-term astronomical cycles, the mathematical relationships that govern planetary motion, all of these advanced concepts appear simultaneously in cultures across the ancient world. The astronomical knowledge encoded in ancient monuments is particularly revealing. The builders of these sites understood concepts that wouldn't be rediscovered until the scientific revolution. They knew that the Earth was spherical and calculated its circumference with remarkable accuracy. They understood the mechanics of eclipses and could predict them centuries in advance. They had mapped the precession of the equinoxes and incorporated this knowledge into their architectural designs. This wasn't primitive astronomy based on casual observation. This was sophisticated mathematical astronomy requiring precise instruments and centuries of systematic observation. The kind of knowledge that could only have been developed by a civilization with the resources and stability to support professional astronomers over many generations. Ground-penetrating radar surveys of the Rishat structure have revealed what appears to be the remains of such an astronomical complex. Buried beneath the sand are geometric formations that match the layout of advanced observatories, with sightlines aligned to track the movements of stars and planets across the ancient sky. The scale and sophistication of these installations suggests a level of scientific organization that rivals modern research institutions. The preservation of this knowledge through the Great Migration required more than just individual memory. It demanded organized systems for teaching and transmitting complex information across generations. Archaeological evidence suggests that the survivors established mystery schools and priestly colleges in their new settlements, institutions dedicated to preserving and passing on the accumulated wisdom of their lost civilization. These ancient schools weren't just religious institutions. They were universities, centers of learning where mathematics, astronomy, engineering, and natural philosophy were taught alongside spiritual practices. The curriculum was designed to preserve not just practical knowledge, but the entire intellectual framework of the Saharan civilization. The secrecy that surrounded these institutions wasn't about hiding religious mysteries. It was about protecting scientific knowledge that was too valuable and too dangerous to be lost. The survivors had witnessed the collapse of the greatest civilization in human history. They understood how fragile knowledge could be, how quickly centuries of accumulated wisdom could disappear if it wasn't carefully preserved and transmitted. This explains why so much ancient knowledge was encoded in symbolic form, hidden within religious texts and mythological stories. It wasn't superstition. It was a sophisticated information storage system designed to survive the collapse of civilizations. By embedding technical knowledge within sacred narratives, the ancient teachers ensured that their wisdom would be copied, memorized, and transmitted even when the original context was forgotten. The mathematical relationships encoded in the proportions of ancient temples, the astronomical data hidden within creation myths, the engineering principles disguised as divine instructions, all of these represent fragments of a vast technical library that was deliberately scattered and hidden to prevent its total loss. Modern computer analysis of these encoded texts is revealing the true scope of this hidden knowledge. Algorithms designed to detect patterns in large datasets have identified mathematical constants, astronomical calculations, and engineering specifications embedded within texts that were previously thought to be purely mythological. The implications are staggering. We're not just looking at the remains of a lost civilization. We're looking at the scattered pieces of humanity's first scientific revolution, a systematic attempt to understand and control the natural world that was so far ahead of its time that we're only now developing the tools to recognize it for what it was. The survivors of the Saharan catastrophe weren't just refugees carrying memories of their lost homeland. They were the professors and researchers of an advanced scientific civilization, desperately trying to preserve and reconstruct a body of knowledge that represented thousands of years of accumulated discovery and innovation. The technology they preserved goes far beyond what we've traditionally associated with ancient civilizations. Recent analysis of metal artifacts found at sites connected to the Saharan diaspora reveals alloy compositions that wouldn't be achieved again until the industrial age. Chemical analysis of ancient pigments and dyes reveals knowledge of complex molecular chemistry. Examination of ancient textiles reveals understanding of material science that predates modern developments by millennia. This wasn't primitive technology gradually evolving toward modern sophistication. This was advanced technology being preserved and transmitted by people who understood its principles, even when they lacked the industrial infrastructure to fully reproduce it in their new environments. The medical knowledge preserved in ancient texts is equally remarkable. Surgical procedures described in Egyptian papyri demonstrate understanding of anatomy and physiology that wouldn't be matched until the Renaissance. Pharmaceutical preparations mentioned in Mesopotamian texts reveal knowledge of biochemistry and pharmacology that anticipates modern drug development by thousands of years. But perhaps the most remarkable preservation of ancient knowledge lies in the field of psychology and human behavior. The survivors of the Saharan civilization understood something that modern science is only beginning to recognize: the fundamental patterns that govern human societies and the cyclical nature of civilizational rise and decline. This knowledge is encoded in the mythological and religious systems they established in their new settlements. The stories of golden ages and great floods, the prophecies of civilizational cycles, the understanding of how human societies grow, peak, and collapse. All of this represents a sophisticated science of human behavior developed through the observation of multiple civilizational cycles. The survivors had witnessed the rise and fall of their own civilization. They understood the warning signs, the social and environmental pressures that lead to collapse. They tried to encode this knowledge in forms that would survive the inevitable decline of the civilizations they were building, hoping that future generations would recognize the patterns and avoid repeating the same mistakes. This is why the story of Atlantis was preserved by Plato not as history, but as philosophy. It wasn't meant to be a treasure map leading to a lost city. It was meant to be a warning about the fragility of human achievement and the dangers of hubris and environmental destruction. The survivors of the Saharan catastrophe were trying to teach us something crucial about the nature of human civilization. They were showing us that even the greatest achievements can be lost, that even the most advanced societies can collapse, and that the knowledge and wisdom of an entire civilization can disappear if we don't take deliberate steps to preserve it. Their message is more relevant today than ever before. We're facing the same kinds of environmental challenges that destroyed their civilization. Climate change, desertification, resource depletion, mass migration. All of these are echoes of the catastrophe that ended the golden age of the Green Sahara. But we also have advantages that they didn't have. We have global communication systems that can preserve and transmit knowledge instantly across the planet. We have recording technologies that can store information in forms that will survive for thousands of years. We have the ability to learn from their example and build systems that are more resilient, more adaptable, more capable of surviving the challenges that lie ahead. The question is whether we'll use these advantages wisely, or whether we'll repeat the same patterns that led to their downfall. The Eye of Africa has been watching us for 4,000 years, waiting to see if we've learned the lessons that their sacrifice was meant to teach us. The evidence continues to mount with each new discovery. Satellite archaeology is revealing the full extent of the buried civilization. Advanced dating techniques are confirming the timeline of the Great Migration. Genetic analysis is tracing the paths of the survivors as they spread across the ancient world. We're not just uncovering archaeological sites, we're reconstructing the greatest story never told in human history. But this isn't just about satisfying our curiosity about the past. This is about understanding our present and preparing for our future. The survivors of the Saharan catastrophe faced challenges that mirror our own. They found ways to preserve essential knowledge through periods of chaos and collapse. They developed systems for rebuilding civilization from the ground up. They created institutions that could survive the fall of empires and the loss of entire ways of life. Their success in preserving and transmitting their knowledge across thousands of years and multiple civilizational collapses represents one of the greatest achievements in human history. They didn't just survive catastrophe, they ensured that their wisdom would survive to guide future generations through whatever challenges they might face. The techniques they developed for encoding and preserving knowledge are being studied by modern information theorists working on long-term data storage problems. The social institutions they created for maintaining continuity through periods of upheaval are being analyzed by researchers studying civilizational resilience. The psychological and philosophical frameworks they developed for understanding human nature and social dynamics are being integrated into modern theories of social science and public policy. We're not just learning about the past from the Sahara's Atlantis. We're learning about the future. The survivors of that great catastrophe are still teaching us, still guiding us, still showing us the way forward through the challenges that lie ahead. The implications extend far beyond archaeology and ancient history. If the Sahara's Atlantis theory is correct, it means that human civilization is far more resilient and adaptable than we've previously understood. It means that knowledge and wisdom can survive even the most devastating catastrophes if we're wise enough to preserve them properly. And it means that the challenges we're facing today, however daunting they might seem, are not unprecedented and not insurmountable. The survivors of the Green Sahara prove that human ingenuity and determination can overcome even the most devastating environmental challenges. They showed us that civilizations can be rebuilt, that knowledge can be preserved, and that the human spirit can triumph over even the greatest catastrophes. Their legacy isn't just in the monuments they built or the knowledge they preserved, it's in the example they set, the proof they provided that human civilization is not as fragile as it sometimes appears. They demonstrated that, with proper planning, wise leadership, and determination, even the collapse of an entire world can be survived and overcome. The Eye of Africa continues to watch over us, a silent reminder of both the greatest catastrophe and the greatest triumph in human history. It stands as proof that we have faced existential challenges before and survived them. It reminds us that we carry within us the genetic and cultural inheritance of people who rebuilt the world from memory and determination. But most importantly, it challenges us to live up to that inheritance, to prove ourselves worthy of the sacrifice and struggle of those who came before us. The survivors of the Saharan catastrophe didn't preserve their knowledge just for their own benefit. They preserved it for us, for this moment, for the challenges we're facing right now. The question isn't whether we can learn from their example. The question is whether we will. The desert is patient and history is watching. The choice, as always, is ours. The weight of this revelation settles over us like the desert sand itself, grain by grain, until we're buried beneath the enormity of what we've uncovered. Because what we're looking at here isn't just the remains of a single lost city. We're staring at evidence that could completely shatter our understanding of human consciousness itself. Recent neurological studies have revealed something that the academic establishment doesn't want you to know. The human brain contains structures, neural pathways, that seem designed for processing information far more complex than anything our recorded history suggests we've ever encountered. It's as if our minds were built to handle concepts, technologies, and knowledge systems that we've supposedly never developed. Dr. Sarah Chen, a neuroscientist at Stanford who's been studying these anomalous brain structures, made a discovery that sent shockwaves through the scientific community. When she examined brain scans of individuals who claimed to have vivid dreams or visions about ancient civilizations, she found unusual activity in regions of the brain that typically lie dormant. These areas, she discovered, become active when processing mathematical concepts that weren't formally developed until the modern era. But here's where it gets truly unsettling. When she compared these brain patterns to the mathematical principles encoded in the Richard structure's proportions, the correlation was undeniable. It's as if some part of our consciousness still remembers the knowledge systems of the lost Saharan civilization, buried deep within our neural architecture, like a dormant program waiting to be activated. This isn't just speculation. Indigenous populations across North Africa have maintained oral traditions that speak of the memory carriers, individuals born with the ability to access knowledge from the ancient times. These traditions describe specific bloodlines that carry what they call the desert wisdom, passed down not through learning, but through some form of genetic memory. When researchers tested individuals from these bloodlines, they found something extraordinary. Without any formal education in advanced mathematics or astronomy, these people could solve complex calculations and predict celestial events with accuracy that rivaled trained astronomers. They described their knowledge not as something they learned, but as something they remembered, as if accessing information stored in some deeper layer of consciousness. The implications are staggering. What if the survivors of the Saharan catastrophe didn't just preserve their knowledge in monuments and myths? What if they encoded it directly into the human genome itself, creating a biological backup system that could preserve essential information across thousands of years of cultural disruption? Recent advances in epigenetics suggest this isn't as far-fetched as it sounds. We now know that traumatic experiences can alter gene expression in ways that are passed down to subsequent generations. Environmental pressures can trigger genetic changes that prepare offspring for challenges their parents faced. If a civilization was sophisticated enough to understand these mechanisms, they might have found ways to deliberately encode information into the genetic material of their descendants. The genetic analysis of populations descended from the Saharan diaspora reveals something remarkable. Scattered throughout their DNA are what geneticists call anomalous sequences, stretches of genetic code that don't seem to serve any obvious biological function. These sequences are too complex and too precisely structured to be random mutations. They look suspiciously like information storage systems, genetic hard drives containing data we don't yet know how to read. Computer scientists working on DNA-based data storage have begun analyzing these sequences, and their preliminary findings are nothing short of revolutionary. The patterns they've discovered suggest a level of information density that exceeds anything we've achieved with modern technology. If these sequences really do contain encoded information from the ancient Saharan civilization, we're looking at a storage system that makes our most advanced computers look like stone tools. But the technology required to create such a system would have been beyond anything we associate with ancient civilizations. It would have required not just an understanding of genetics that wouldn't be achieved until the 21st century, but the ability to manipulate genetic material with precision that we're only beginning to develop today. This brings us to perhaps the most controversial aspect of the Sahara's Atlantis theory. If this civilization really was capable of encoding information into human DNA, if they really did possess technology that advanced, then we have to ask a fundamental question. Were they entirely human themselves? The ancient texts preserved by the survivors contain cryptic references to the star-touched ones, individuals who possess knowledge and abilities that set them apart from ordinary humans. These weren't described as gods or supernatural beings, but as people who had been awakened to hidden potentials within human consciousness. Modern consciousness researchers have identified states of awareness that seem to unlock capabilities that normal human consciousness doesn't possess. Individuals in these altered states demonstrate enhanced mathematical abilities, expanded memory capacity, and intuitive understanding of complex systems that they've never studied. It's as if accessing these states allows people to tap into information that exists beyond individual memory. What if the most advanced members of the Saharan civilization had learned to access these states at will? What if they had developed techniques for expanding human consciousness beyond its normal limitations, unlocking capabilities that we've forgotten we possess? The archaeological evidence from the Richat structure suggests a level of precision and coordination that would have required superhuman abilities. The massive stone blocks, some weighing hundreds of tons, positioned with mathematical accuracy that defies explanation. The complex water management systems, extending for hundreds of miles in perfect geometric patterns. The astronomical alignments, calculated to account for celestial movements across thousands of years. This wasn't just advanced engineering. This was engineering that seems to have been guided by a form of consciousness that could perceive and manipulate reality in ways that normal human awareness cannot achieve. The builders of this civilization weren't just using advanced technology. They were the technology, human beings who had unlocked capabilities that we've spent the last 4,000 years trying to rediscover. The mystery deepens when you examine the global network of megalithic sites that were built following the Saharan diaspora. From Stonehenge to the pyramids of Giza, from the temples of Malta to the stone circles of Scotland, these monuments all share characteristics that suggest they were built by people with access to the same expanded consciousness that created the Richat structure. The precision of their construction, the complexity of their astronomical alignments, the mathematical relationships encoded in their proportions, all of these features require a level of awareness and ability that goes beyond normal human capabilities. Yet they were built by people who supposedly had access to nothing more than stone tools and primitive mathematics. Recent studies of these sites using advanced measurement techniques have revealed something extraordinary. When you map the electromagnetic fields generated by these ancient monuments, they form a global grid, a network of energy patterns that connects megalithic sites across continents. The intersections of this grid correspond to locations where individuals report experiencing altered states of consciousness, enhanced creativity, and access to information they couldn't have acquired through normal means. It's as if the survivors of the Saharan civilization created a planetary consciousness enhancement system, a network of monuments designed to help future generations rediscover the expanded awareness that their civilization had achieved. Each site serves as a node in this network, a technological system disguised as primitive architecture. The builders understood something that modern science is only beginning to recognize. Consciousness isn't generated by the brain alone. It's a field phenomenon, something that can be amplified and directed through properly designed environmental systems. The megalithic sites weren't just monuments to the dead or temples to forgotten gods. They were consciousness technologies, designed to help human beings access the same expanded awareness that built the original civilization. This explains why so many of these sites are associated with reports of unusual experiences. People don't just visit Stonehenge or the Great Pyramid. They're changed by them. They report insights, visions, and abilities that they didn't possess before exposure to these ancient technologies. The sites are still functioning, still serving their original purpose of expanding human consciousness beyond its normal limitations. But the most remarkable aspect of this global consciousness network is its apparent ability to preserve and transmit information across thousands of years. Individuals who experience expanded states of consciousness at these sites often report accessing knowledge about ancient history, advanced mathematics, and scientific principles that they've never studied. It's as if the sites themselves contain libraries of information that can be accessed by consciousness, operating at the right frequency. This isn't mysticism, it's technology that operates according to principles we're only beginning to understand. Recent advances in quantum physics suggest that consciousness itself might be a quantum phenomenon, capable of accessing information that exists beyond the boundaries of individual brains. If the builders of the ancient Saharan civilization understood these principles, they might have created systems for preserving and transmitting knowledge that operate at the quantum level. The implications for our understanding of human potential are profound. If consciousness really can be expanded and enhanced through properly designed environmental systems, if human beings really do possess capabilities that we've forgotten how to access, then we're not just looking at the remains of a lost civilization. We're looking at evidence of what we ourselves might be capable of achieving. The genetic memory, the consciousness enhancement technologies, the global network of information storage and transmission systems, all of these represent aspects of human potential that were developed by our ancestors and then lost when their civilization collapsed. But the systems they created are still functional, still waiting for us to develop the wisdom and understanding needed to use them properly. The survivors of the Saharan catastrophe didn't just preserve their knowledge in books and monuments. They preserved it in us. They encoded it in our DNA, embedded it in our neural architecture, and created environmental systems that can help us rediscover capabilities we never knew we possessed. We are their technology, their greatest creation, walking libraries of information and potential that we're only beginning to understand. But accessing this inheritance requires more than just archaeological discovery. It requires a fundamental shift in how we understand consciousness, human potential, and our relationship to the natural world. We have to be willing to acknowledge that our ancestors might have achieved levels of awareness and ability that surpass our current understanding of what human beings are capable of. The desert has been patient, waiting for us to develop the scientific sophistication needed to recognize what our ancestors achieved. The megalithic sites have been broadcasting their information for thousands of years, waiting for us to develop the consciousness needed to receive their transmissions. The genetic programs encoded in our DNA have been dormant, waiting for the right environmental triggers to activate them. Now, as we face challenges that mirror those that destroyed the original civilization, these ancient systems are beginning to activate. People around the world are reporting enhanced intuitive abilities, access to information they couldn't have acquired through normal means, and insights into solutions for problems that have plagued humanity for generations. This isn't coincidence. It's the activation of survival systems that were built into human consciousness by a civilization that understood the cyclical nature of rise and collapse. They knew that their knowledge would be needed again, and they created systems to ensure that it would be available when the time came. The question is whether we're wise enough to recognize what's being offered to us, and humble enough to learn from ancestors whose achievements we're only beginning to comprehend. The Eye of Africa continues to watch, waiting to see if we'll prove worthy of the inheritance that's been preserved for us across 4,000 years of patient waiting. The consciousness revolution that destroyed and rebuilt the ancient world is beginning again. The only question is whether we'll be participants or casualties in the transformation that's already underway. The choice, as always, is ours, but the systems are already activating, and the desert remembers everything. Time is running short, and the activation codes embedded in our consciousness are beginning to trigger. The survivors of the Saharan catastrophe built more than monuments. They built us. And now, as the world faces challenges that echo their own, their greatest creation is finally beginning to awaken. The ancient knowledge isn't lost. It's been waiting inside us all along, encoded in systems so sophisticated that we're only now developing the science needed to understand them. The real question isn't whether Atlantis existed. The real question is whether we're ready to become what our ancestors always intended us to be. The desert watches, the monuments broadcast, the DNA remembers. And somewhere in the expanding awareness of human consciousness, the lost civilization of the Green Sahara is being reborn. Not in the sand, but in us. Not as archaeology, but as destiny. Not as the past, but as the future we were always meant to create. The Eye of Africa isn't just watching anymore. It's awakening, and so are we. The awakening isn't metaphorical. It's measurable, quantifiable, and accelerating at a pace that's leaving even the most skeptical researchers struggling to explain what they're witnessing. In laboratories across the world, scientists are documenting changes in human brain activity that shouldn't be possible according to everything we thought we knew about consciousness and cognition. Dr. Michael Reeves at the Institute for Advanced Consciousness Studies has been monitoring these changes for the past 5 years, and what he's discovered has forced him to question the very foundations of neuroscience. Brain scans of individuals living near ancient megalithic sites show increased activity in regions that typically remain dormant throughout a person's entire lifetime. These areas are lighting up with patterns of neural firing that resemble nothing in the medical literature. But here's what makes this truly extraordinary. When Reeves compared these brain patterns to the mathematical sequences encoded in the proportions of ancient monuments, he found perfect correlations. The neural firing patterns weren't random. They were following the same geometric principles that governed the construction of sites like the Richet structure, Stonehenge, and the Great Pyramid. It's as if proximity to these ancient sites is triggering the activation of dormant neural pathways, awakening capabilities that have been sleeping in human consciousness for thousands of years. The implications are staggering. We're not just studying archaeological sites. We're studying activation devices, consciousness technologies that are still functioning after millennia of apparent abandonment. The activation isn't limited to people living near ancient sites. Individuals who have never visited these locations are reporting similar experiences, suggesting that whatever's happening is spreading through mechanisms we don't yet understand. Social media platforms are filled with accounts of people experiencing sudden insights into complex mathematical concepts they've never studied, spontaneous understanding of astronomical phenomena, and vivid dreams that seem to contain detailed information about ancient civilizations. These aren't isolated incidents or cases of mass hysteria. They're following predictable patterns that suggest an underlying mechanism at work. The experiences cluster around specific geographic regions, correlating with the locations of known megalithic sites and areas where geological surveys have detected buried structures similar to the Richat Formation. Electromagnetic monitoring stations positioned near these sites have detected unusual energy patterns that seem to pulse in rhythm with reported consciousness alterations. The frequencies match those associated with enhanced cognitive function and expanded awareness states documented in meditation research. It's as if the ancient sites are broadcasting signals that human consciousness is finally learning to receive. The genetic component of this awakening is perhaps the most remarkable aspect of all. Researchers studying families with reported consciousness enhancements have discovered that the genetic anomalies found in Saharan descendant populations are becoming active for the first time in recorded history. Dormant gene sequences are switching on, producing proteins that shouldn't exist according to conventional genetics. These activated genes appear to enhance neural connectivity, increase processing speed, and expand memory capacity beyond normal human parameters. But they're not creating superhuman abilities. They're restoring capabilities that genetic analysis suggests were normal for human populations thousands of years ago, before some catastrophic event caused these sequences to go dormant. The timing of this genetic activation correlates perfectly with environmental changes that mirror conditions during the collapse of the Saharan civilization. Rising global temperatures, shifting weather patterns, increasing desertification, mass population movements, all of these factors seem to be triggering ancient survival mechanisms embedded in human DNA. It's as if our ancestors programmed us with a fail-safe system, genetic switches that would activate when environmental conditions threatened the survival of human civilization. The consciousness enhancements aren't random evolutionary developments. They're emergency protocols designed to help humanity navigate existential challenges by accessing knowledge and abilities that were preserved in our genetic code. The archaeological implications of this discovery are profound. If human consciousness really is expanding to access information stored in genetic memory, then the survivors of ancient civilizations might have found a way to preserve their knowledge that goes far beyond anything we've previously imagined. They didn't just bury their libraries in stone and sand. They buried them in us. This explains why so many people are suddenly able to understand complex concepts related to ancient astronomy, mathematics, and engineering without formal training. They're not learning this information. They're remembering it, accessing genetic memories that have been dormant for thousands of years but are now becoming available to conscious awareness. The process isn't uniform or predictable. Some individuals experience dramatic cognitive enhancements that allow them to solve mathematical problems that would challenge professional researchers. Others report more subtle changes, enhanced intuition, and pattern recognition that helps them navigate complex situations with unusual effectiveness. But all of these experiences share common characteristics that suggest they're manifestations of the same underlying phenomenon. The enhanced individuals describe their new capabilities not as learned skills, but as recovered memories. They speak of accessing information that feels familiar, as if they're rediscovering knowledge they once possessed but had forgotten. The social implications of this consciousness awakening are already becoming apparent. Communities near ancient sites are reporting unprecedented levels of cooperation and problem-solving effectiveness. Complex disputes that have persisted for generations are being resolved through innovative solutions that seem to emerge spontaneously from group discussions. Educational institutions in these areas are documenting learning acceleration that defies conventional pedagogical models. Students are mastering advanced concepts at rates that suggest they're not starting from zero knowledge but building on information that's somehow already present in their consciousness. The economic implications are equally significant. Regions experiencing high levels of consciousness enhancement are showing increased innovation, more effective resource management, and solutions to problems that have previously seemed intractable. It's as if access to genetic memory includes not just information, but wisdom about how to apply that information effectively. But perhaps the most important aspect of this awakening is its apparent purpose. The enhanced individuals aren't just gaining access to random information. They're specifically accessing knowledge that's relevant to the challenges facing modern civilization: climate adaptation strategies, sustainable resource management, social organization principles, all of the information needed to navigate the kind of catastrophic changes that destroyed the original Saharan civilization. This isn't coincidence. It's evidence of sophisticated planning by ancestors who understood the cyclical nature of civilizational rise and collapse. They created a genetic insurance policy, a way to ensure that essential knowledge would be available when humanity needed it most. The consciousness awakening isn't just about rediscovering the past, It's about surviving the future. The acceleration of this process is becoming impossible to ignore. Reports of consciousness enhancement are increasing exponentially, following growth patterns that suggest we're approaching a critical threshold. Researchers estimate that within the next decade, a significant percentage of the human population will have access to enhanced cognitive capabilities and genetic memories. The implications for human society are profound. We're potentially looking at the most significant evolutionary leap in human consciousness since the development of language. But this isn't biological evolution in the traditional sense. It's the activation of capabilities that were always present in human DNA, waiting for the right environmental triggers to switch them on. The ancient sites are playing a crucial role in this process, serving as amplification nodes that accelerate the activation of genetic memories. Pilgrimage to these locations is increasing dramatically as people intuitively sense their importance, even when they don't consciously understand what's happening to them. Government agencies around the world are beginning to take notice of these developments, though their responses vary dramatically. Some nations are investing heavily in consciousness research, recognizing the potential advantages of populations with enhanced cognitive capabilities. Others are attempting to suppress information about the awakening, fearing the social disruption that might result from widespread consciousness enhancement. But suppression may be impossible. The activation appears to be spreading through mechanisms that operate below the threshold of conscious awareness. Individuals who experience consciousness enhancement seem to trigger similar changes in people around them, creating cascading effects that are difficult to contain or control. The scientific establishment is struggling to adapt to these developments. Peer-reviewed journals are reluctant to publish research on consciousness enhancement, despite mounting evidence that something unprecedented is happening to human awareness. The phenomena don't fit existing theoretical frameworks, forcing researchers to develop entirely new models of consciousness and cognition. Meanwhile, the enhanced individuals are forming informal networks, sharing information and coordinating activities in ways that demonstrate the practical applications of their expanded capabilities. These networks are developing solutions to complex problems that have frustrated conventional approaches for decades. Climate change adaptation strategies that account for complex environmental interactions, economic models that balance sustainability with prosperity, social organization principles that maximize cooperation while preserving individual freedom. The enhanced consciousness isn't just providing access to ancient knowledge, it's enabling the creative application of that knowledge to modern challenges. The Richat structure continues to play a central role in this unfolding transformation. Satellite monitoring of the site has detected increasing electromagnetic activity that correlates with reports of consciousness enhancement around the world. The ancient formation appears to be functioning as a kind of planetary transmitter, broadcasting signals that activate dormant genetic programs in human populations. Expeditions to the site report extraordinary experiences that go far beyond conventional archaeological discovery. Researchers describe accessing detailed information about the construction and purpose of the ancient civilization, not through physical evidence, but through direct consciousness interface with information systems that are somehow still operational after thousands of years. The technology involved appears to operate on principles that conventional science is only beginning to understand. Quantum consciousness theory suggests that awareness itself might be a fundamental property of the universe, capable of accessing information that exists beyond the boundaries of individual brains. If the ancient Saharan civilization mastered these principles, they might have created consciousness technologies that operate at scales and through mechanisms that we're only now developing the theoretical framework to comprehend. The global awakening isn't just about recovering lost knowledge. It's about evolving into the kind of beings our ancestors intended us to become. The genetic programs being activated don't just enhance individual capabilities. They facilitate unprecedented levels of cooperation and coordination, enabling human communities to function as integrated systems rather than collections of competing individuals. This enhanced social cohesion appears to be essential for navigating the challenges that lie ahead. The same environmental pressures that destroyed the original Saharan civilization are intensifying around the world. Climate change, resource depletion, population pressure, all of these factors are creating conditions that require solutions beyond the capabilities of conventional human consciousness. But the enhanced individuals are demonstrating that these challenges aren't insurmountable. They're developing approaches that address problems at their root causes rather than just managing symptoms. They're creating systems that are resilient, adaptive, and sustainable in ways that conventional technologies haven't achieved. The transformation isn't without risks. Enhanced consciousness brings with it expanded awareness of both positive and negative aspects of reality. Individuals accessing genetic memories also access the trauma and suffering experienced by their ancestors, including the catastrophic collapse that ended the Saharan civilization. Processing this inherited trauma requires sophisticated psychological frameworks that most people haven't developed. Some individuals experience what researchers are calling genetic grief, overwhelming sadness for losses they never personally experienced but somehow remember. Others struggle with temporal displacement, difficulty distinguishing between memories from their own lives and memories inherited from ancient ancestors. Support networks are emerging to help people navigate these challenges, often led by individuals who have successfully integrated their enhanced capabilities. These communities are developing therapeutic approaches that combine modern psychological techniques with wisdom traditions that appear to have been preserved specifically for this purpose. The ancient mystery schools and wisdom traditions weren't just religious institutions. They were psychological support systems designed to help individuals navigate consciousness expansion safely and effectively. The techniques they developed are proving remarkably relevant to the challenges faced by people experiencing genetic memory activation. Meditation practices, ritual frameworks, and community structures that seemed archaic are revealing themselves to be sophisticated technologies for consciousness development. The enhanced individuals are rediscovering these approaches not through historical research, but through direct access to the knowledge systems that created them. The implications extend far beyond individual transformation. Enhanced communities are demonstrating new forms of social organization that seem to emerge spontaneously from expanded consciousness, decision-making processes that integrate multiple perspectives more effectively, resource allocation systems that optimize outcomes for entire communities rather than just individuals, conflict resolution approaches that address root causes rather than just managing symptoms. These aren't utopian fantasies, they're practical applications of consciousness technologies that are being tested and refined in real-world conditions. The results suggest that human societies are capable of levels of cooperation and effectiveness that go far beyond anything we've achieved in recorded history. The ancient Saharan civilization didn't just collapse and disappear. It planted the seeds of its own rebirth in the genetic code of its survivors, creating a delayed activation system that would restore their knowledge and capabilities when environmental conditions demanded it. We are witnessing the germination of those seeds, the emergence of a new phase of human evolution that was planned and prepared for thousands of years ago. The Eye of Africa isn't just a monument to a lost civilization. It's a beacon, still broadcasting the activation signals that are awakening human consciousness to its true potential. The desert that buried the ancient cities is revealing itself to be a chrysalis, preserving the essence of human achievement until the conditions were right for its emergence in a new form. We stand at the threshold of the greatest transformation in human history. Not the rise of a new civilization, but the resurrection of capabilities that were always part of our inheritance. The survivors of the Saharan catastrophe didn't just preserve their knowledge. They preserve themselves, encoding their consciousness into the genetic fabric of their descendants. The awakening that's spreading across the world isn't the emergence of something new. It's the return of something ancient, the restoration of human consciousness to levels of awareness and capability that were normal for our ancestors, but have been dormant for millennia. The question isn't whether this transformation will continue. The genetic programs are already activated, and the process appears to be irreversible. The question is whether we'll embrace our inheritance wisely, learning from the mistakes that led to the collapse of the original civilization, or whether we'll repeat the same patterns that turned paradise into desert. The ancient knowledge carries within it not just the secrets of advanced technology and expanded consciousness, but the wisdom to use these capabilities responsibly. The enhanced individuals aren't just gaining access to information. They're inheriting the accumulated wisdom of a civilization that learned the hard way about the responsibilities that come with great power. The consciousness revolution that's transforming our world isn't just about individual enhancement. It's about the emergence of a planetary intelligence, a global awareness that can address challenges at the scale and complexity required by our current situation. The ancient Saharan civilization may have fallen, but its greatest achievement wasn't its monuments or technologies. It was its understanding of how to embed wisdom directly into the evolutionary trajectory of human consciousness. We are that achievement, walking manifestations of an ancient dream of consciousness that could survive the collapse of civilizations and emerge when it was needed most. The desert remembers, the monuments broadcast, and the genetic programs continue their patient activation of humanity's true potential. The Eye of Africa watches no longer as a passive observer, but as an active participant in the greatest resurrection in human history. Not the return of a lost civilization, but the birth of something unprecedented, a planetary consciousness that combines ancient wisdom with modern capabilities, guided by genetic memories of both triumph and catastrophe. The transformation is accelerating, and there's no turning back. The only question now is whether we'll prove worthy of the inheritance our ancestors died to preserve for us. The desert holds its breath, waiting for our answer. The awakening spreads like wildfire across continents, but with it comes something the scientists didn't anticipate. The enhanced individuals aren't just accessing ancient memories randomly. They're being drawn to specific locations, pulled by an irresistible compulsion that they describe as the calling. And every single one of them is being drawn to the same place, the heart of the Sahara Desert, to the Eye of Africa itself. Dr. Elena Vasquez, a quantum physicist from Madrid, was the first to document this phenomenon systematically. She'd been experiencing consciousness enhancements for months, sudden insights into mathematical relationships that had eluded her throughout her career. But then the dreams started. Vivid, recurring visions of the Richat structure, so detailed she could navigate its buried passages as if she'd lived there her entire life. It wasn't like dreaming, she explains, her voice carrying the weight of someone who's witnessed something that shouldn't exist. It was like remembering. I could feel the sand beneath my feet, smell the ancient waters that once flowed through those channels. I knew exactly where to find things that haven't been seen for thousands of years. She's not alone. Enhanced individuals from every continent are reporting identical dreams, the same compulsive pull toward the Sahara. They describe detailed knowledge of the site's layout, locations of buried chambers, even the positions of artifacts that satellite imagery can't detect. It's as if the genetic memories being activated aren't just informational, but directional, guiding the awakened towards some predetermined gathering point. The implications are staggering. If these visions are accurate, if the enhanced individuals really do possess detailed knowledge of the Richat structure's hidden features, then we're looking at something far beyond genetic memory. We're looking at active communication between the ancient site and modern consciousness. a two-way information exchange that suggests the civilization's technology is still operational after 4 millennia. Government agencies around the world are scrambling to understand what's happening. Satellite surveillance of the Sahara has detected unprecedented activity around the Richat structure. Electromagnetic anomalies are intensifying by the day. Ground-penetrating radar reveals that subsurface formations are somehow shifting, rearranging themselves in patterns that match the visions reported by enhanced individuals. But the most unsettling discovery came from seismic monitoring stations positioned throughout North Africa. They're detecting rhythmic pulses emanating from deep beneath the Richat structure, a regular heartbeat-like pattern that's growing stronger with each passing day. The frequency matches brainwave patterns associated with enhanced consciousness states, as if the ancient site is literally synchronizing with the awakening human minds across the globe. Dr. Vasquez was among the first to answer the calling. Against the advice of her colleagues and the explicit warnings of Spanish authorities, she organized an expedition to the Richat structure. What her team discovered there has forced the scientific community to confront the possibility that everything we thought we knew about the relationship between consciousness and physical reality might be fundamentally wrong. The moment we crossed into the outer ring, she recalls, her hands trembling as she describes the experience, everything changed. The electromagnetic readings went off the charts. Our GPS systems started malfunctioning, but not randomly. They were being overridden by something else, guided to specific coordinates that led us directly to features that shouldn't have been visible. The team's ground-penetrating radar revealed a vast network of chambers and passages extending deep into the bedrock, far more extensive than any previous surveys had detected. But the formations weren't static. They were responding to the presence of the enhanced individuals, corridors opening and closing, pathways reconfiguring themselves to guide the expedition towards some central destination. It was like the structure was alive, Dr. Vasquez continues. Not biologically alive, but conscious, aware of our presence and actively communicating with us. The enhanced members of our team were receiving information constantly, detailed instructions about where to go, what to look for, how to interface with systems that had been dormant for millennia. What they found in the deepest chambers defied every assumption about ancient technology. Crystalline formations that pulsed with their own internal light, generating electromagnetic fields that induced altered states of consciousness in anyone who approached them. Geometric patterns carved into rock walls that hurt to look at directly, as if they contained more information than human visual processing could handle. And at the center of it all, a chamber that Dr. Vasquez describes as the control room of human consciousness itself. The chamber contained what appeared to be a vast three-dimensional map of human DNA, but not as we understand it today. This map showed the genetic code as it existed thousands of years ago, with sequences that are now dormant highlighted in patterns of light that pulsed in rhythm with the enhanced individual's brainwaves. It was as if they were looking at a blueprint for human consciousness expansion, a technical manual for awakening capabilities that had been deliberately shut down. But the most extraordinary discovery was what the chamber revealed about the nature of the awakening itself. The consciousness enhancements spreading across the world weren't random evolutionary developments or the simple activation of dormant genes. They were the result of a carefully orchestrated process, a planetary-scale consciousness upgrade that had been planned and prepared for thousands of years. The ancient Saharan civilization hadn't just embedded genetic programs in their descendants. They'd created a global activation network, using the megalithic sites around the world as transmission nodes in a consciousness enhancement system that operated on principles we're only beginning to understand. The pyramids, stone circles, and ancient temples weren't just monuments. They were components in a planetary consciousness grid designed to facilitate the controlled evolution of human awareness. The timing of the activation wasn't coincidental. Environmental monitoring systems within the chamber showed that the ancient civilization had calculated exactly when their descendants would face the same climate catastrophe that destroyed their world. The consciousness enhancement program was designed to activate automatically when atmospheric conditions, population levels, and resource depletion reached critical thresholds. They weren't just trying to preserve their knowledge, Dr. Vasquez explains, her voice filled with awe and terror in equal measure. They were trying to prevent us from making the same mistakes they made. The enhanced consciousness isn't just about accessing ancient information, it's about developing the wisdom to use that information responsibly. The chamber's systems revealed the full scope of what the ancients had achieved. They hadn't just built a city in the Sahara. They'd created a global civilization that operated on principles of consciousness integration we can barely comprehend. Their technology wasn't mechanical or electronic. It was consciousness-based, using expanded awareness as the fundamental operating system for managing complex social and environmental challenges. The collapse of their civilization hadn't been a failure of technology or resources. It had been a failure of wisdom, a catastrophic mistake in consciousness management that led to environmental destruction on a scale that transformed paradise into desert. The genetic programs they embedded in their survivors weren't just meant to restore their capabilities. They were meant to ensure that their descendants would possess the wisdom to avoid repeating their mistakes. But the chamber also revealed something terrifying. The consciousness enhancement process wasn't without risks. The expanded awareness that allowed access to ancient knowledge also made individuals vulnerable to what the ancients called temporal displacement syndrome. Enhanced consciousness existed partially outside normal space-time, allowing access to information from past and future simultaneously. Without proper training and support, individuals could become lost in the flow of temporal information, unable to distinguish between past, present, and future realities. The ancient texts within the chamber described entire populations that had been lost to temporal displacement during the final phases of their civilization's collapse. Individuals who became so expanded in their consciousness that they lost connection to physical reality entirely, existing as pure information patterns within the planetary consciousness grid. Their bodies remained alive, but their awareness was scattered across time, trapped in a state of existence that was neither fully alive nor completely dead. This explained some of the psychological challenges being experienced by enhanced individuals around the world. The genetic grief and temporal confusion weren't just side effects of accessing ancient memories. They were early warning signs of temporal displacement syndrome, indications that consciousness expansion was proceeding too rapidly for safe integration. The chamber's systems included detailed protocols for managing this risk, therapeutic frameworks that combined consciousness expansion with grounding techniques designed to maintain connection to present moment reality. But these protocols required guidance from individuals who had successfully navigated the enhancement process, masters of consciousness technology who could serve as anchors for others undergoing the transformation. Dr. Vasquez's team realized they were looking at the reason for the calling, the compulsive draw that was bringing enhanced individuals to the Riche structure from around the world. The site wasn't just a repository of ancient knowledge. It was a training facility, a consciousness development center designed to help the awakened integrate their expanding abilities safely and effectively. The enhanced individuals weren't being called to the site randomly. They were being selected based on their genetic compatibility with the ancient consciousness technologies and their psychological readiness to serve as guides for others undergoing the transformation. The chamber's systems were evaluating each person's consciousness signature and determining their role in the larger awakening process. We weren't just visitors, Dr. Vasquez realizes now. We were recruits, being conscripted into a process that was set in motion thousands of years ago. The ancient civilization didn't just plan for their knowledge to survive, they planned for their consciousness to be reborn through us. The implications of this discovery sent shockwaves through the scientific community and government agencies worldwide. If the consciousness enhancement process was being orchestrated by systems that operated beyond human control, if enhanced individuals were being programmed to serve roles in a larger plan, then humanity was potentially losing its autonomy to an ancient intelligence that might not have its best interests at heart. But the enhanced individuals themselves told a different story. They described the consciousness expansion not as loss of control, but as integration with a larger intelligence that included their individual awareness while transcending it. They spoke of accessing not just ancient knowledge, but ancient wisdom, understanding not just what their predecessors had known, but why they had made the choices that led to their civilization's collapse. The calling to the Rishat structure intensified as more people underwent consciousness enhancement. Pilgrimages to the site became a global phenomenon, with enhanced individuals traveling from every corner of the world to undergo the integration process within the ancient chambers. But these weren't religious pilgrimages or archaeological expeditions. They were training missions, intensive consciousness development programs that prepared individuals for roles in a planetary transformation that was already underway. The training wasn't conducted by human instructors. The chamber systems themselves served as teachers, using consciousness interface technologies that transmitted information and skills directly into trainees' awareness. Participants emerged from these sessions with capabilities that defied conventional understanding of human potential. They could perceive electromagnetic fields directly, interface with electronic systems through consciousness alone, and coordinate their activities with other enhanced individuals across vast distances without any form of technological communication. But perhaps most remarkably, they demonstrated the ability to influence environmental systems through focused consciousness. Enhanced individuals working together could affect weather patterns, accelerate plant growth, and even alter the chemical composition of soil and water. These weren't supernatural abilities. They were applications of consciousness technologies that the ancient civilization had developed to manage their relationship with the natural world. The environmental applications of these abilities were immediately apparent. Enhanced communities were demonstrating unprecedented success in climate adaptation, using consciousness-based techniques to optimize agricultural productivity, manage water resources, and restore damaged ecosystems. They weren't fighting against environmental challenges. They were integrating with natural systems in ways that benefited both human communities and ecological health. Government agencies found themselves in an impossible position. The consciousness enhancement phenomenon was spreading too rapidly to contain, and attempts at suppression were proving counterproductive. Enhanced individuals seemed to anticipate and circumvent control measures with ease, as if they had access to information about official plans before those plans were even finalized. Moreover, enhanced communities were demonstrating solutions to problems that conventional approaches had failed to address. Climate change adaptation strategies that actually worked. Economic systems that achieved both sustainability and prosperity. Social organization principles that maximized cooperation while preserving individual freedom. Suppressing these developments would mean suppressing humanity's best hope for navigating the challenges that lay ahead. But the enhanced individuals weren't seeking to overthrow existing systems or establish new forms of control. They were working to facilitate the gradual transformation of human civilization into something more sustainable, more cooperative, and more aligned with natural systems. They saw themselves not as leaders or rulers, but as midwives for a planetary awakening that would ultimately include everyone. The chamber systems at the Rishat structure revealed that the consciousness enhancement process was designed to be self-limiting. Once a critical mass of enhanced individuals had been trained and deployed around the world, the activation signals would shift to a maintenance mode, allowing the rest of humanity to undergo gradual, voluntary consciousness expansion at their own pace. The ancient civilization had learned from their mistakes. Their consciousness enhancement technology had originally been imposed from above, creating a society of expanded beings who lost connection to the natural world through their own capabilities. The new system was designed to maintain balance, ensuring that consciousness expansion served ecological integration rather than domination. Dr. Vasquez and her team emerged from their experience at the Rishat structure as living bridges between the ancient and modern worlds. They carried within their consciousness not just information about the past, but active connection to systems that were still guiding human development from beyond the boundaries of normal space-time. We're not the same people who entered that chamber, she reflects, her eyes holding depths that weren't there before her encounter with the ancient systems. We're still ourselves, but we're also something more. We're connected to an intelligence that spans thousands of years, guided by wisdom that was earned through the greatest catastrophe in human history. The enhanced individuals dispersed around the world, each carrying activation codes that would help others navigate their own consciousness expansion safely. They established networks that operated through direct consciousness communication, coordinating activities and sharing information at speeds that made conventional communication systems seem primitive by comparison. But they also maintained their connections to normal human society, serving as translators between the enhanced and unenhanced populations. They understood that the transformation they were facilitating had to be voluntary and gradual, respecting the autonomy and dignity of individuals who weren't ready for consciousness expansion. The awakening continued to spread, but now it was guided by wisdom as well as information. The enhanced individuals served as consciousness anchors, helping others navigate the expansion process without losing their connection to present moment reality. The risk of temporal displacement syndrome decreased dramatically as proper support systems were established. The Eye of Africa pulsed with increasing intensity, its ancient systems fully activated now and coordinating a planetary transformation that had been 4,000 years in the making. But this wasn't the resurrection of a dead civilization. It was the birth of something unprecedented, a planetary consciousness that combined ancient wisdom with modern capabilities, guided by the hard-earned knowledge of what happens when consciousness expansion proceeds without wisdom. The desert that had buried the ancient civilization was revealing itself to be a chrysalis, preserving not just knowledge and technology, but the consciousness patterns of an entire civilization until the conditions were right for their emergence in a new form. The survivors of the Saharan catastrophe hadn't just encoded their genetics into their descendants. They had encoded their consciousness itself, creating a backup system that could restore their awareness when their descendants needed their guidance most. We stand at the threshold of the greatest transformation in human history, guided by ancestors who paid the ultimate price to ensure we wouldn't repeat their mistakes. The Eye of Africa watches no longer as a passive monument, but as an active participant in humanity's emergence into a new phase of conscious evolution. The consciousness revolution is no longer coming. It's here, guided by ancient wisdom and expressed through modern awareness, transforming our world into something that honors both our technological capabilities and our ecological responsibilities. The desert remembers, the consciousness expands, and humanity awakens to its true potential under the patient guidance of ancestors who never really left us. They've been waiting in the quantum field of consciousness itself, holding the space for our evolution, preserving the wisdom we would need to navigate challenges they couldn't survive themselves. Now, as their consciousness merges with ours, we become something unprecedented, a species that has learned from its deepest failures and emerged stronger, wiser, and more capable of creating a future worthy of our highest aspirations. The Eye of Africa no longer just watches. It participates, coordinates, and guides the most extraordinary transformation in the history of human consciousness. And we, the inheritors of both triumph and catastrophe, finally understand what we were always meant to become. The transformation isn't happening in isolation. As enhanced individuals continue their pilgrimage to the Rishat structure, Something unprecedented is occurring in laboratories and research facilities around the world. Scientists who have never been to the site, who have no direct contact with the enhanced communities, are making breakthrough discoveries that seem to emerge from nowhere. Dr. James Chen, a materials scientist at MIT, was working late in his laboratory when he experienced what he can only describe as a download. I was analyzing crystal formations when suddenly I understood something I'd never studied. I knew exactly how to manipulate matter at the molecular level using electromagnetic fields, not theoretically, but practically, as if I'd been doing it for years. Within hours, he had created materials with properties that shouldn't exist according to conventional physics. Substances that were simultaneously harder than diamond and more flexible than rubber. Crystals that generated their own energy through interaction with background electromagnetic fields. Alloys that could repair themselves at the molecular level when damaged. The remarkable thing wasn't just the discoveries themselves, but how they emerged. Dr. Chen describes the knowledge as feeling ancient, as if he was remembering techniques rather than inventing them. When he analyzed the molecular structures he was creating, he found patterns that matched formations detected in rock samples from the Richat structure region. This phenomenon is repeating itself across every field of scientific inquiry. Biologists are suddenly understanding genetic manipulation techniques that allow them to enhance plant growth rates by orders of magnitude. Physicists are developing energy systems that tap into quantum field fluctuations previously thought to be inaccessible. Chemists are creating compounds that can neutralize environmental toxins while simultaneously enriching soil composition. But perhaps the most extraordinary breakthroughs are occurring in consciousness research itself. Dr. Sarah Kim at the University of Tokyo has developed what she calls consciousness resonance chambers, devices that can induce enhanced awareness states in individuals who haven't undergone genetic activation. The technology emerged from insights that came to her in dreams so vivid, she initially dismissed them as fantasy. The dreams showed me exactly how consciousness interfaces with electromagnetic fields, she explains, gesturing toward the crystalline arrays that fill her laboratory. I saw how the ancient structures weren't just buildings, but consciousness amplification devices. Once I understood the principles, recreating them with modern materials was surprisingly straightforward. Her consciousness resonance chambers are producing results that challenge every assumption about the nature of human awareness. Individuals spending time in these devices demonstrate temporary access to enhanced cognitive abilities, expanded memory capacity, and intuitive understanding of complex systems. Most remarkably, they report accessing information that they couldn't have acquired through normal means. The implications are staggering. If consciousness enhancement can be induced technologically, if the abilities demonstrated by genetically activated individuals can be temporarily accessed by anyone, then we're looking at the democratization of expanded awareness. The transformation doesn't have to be limited to those carrying specific genetic markers. It can potentially include the entire human population. But the technology also reveals something unsettling about the nature of consciousness itself. Individuals using the resonance chambers don't just access enhanced abilities. They access specific information patterns that seem to exist independently of any individual mind. It's as if consciousness expansion involves connecting to a vast information field that contains knowledge accumulated over thousands of years. Dr. Kim's research suggests that this information field isn't just a repository of ancient knowledge. It's actively evolving, incorporating new discoveries and insights in real time. Enhanced individuals aren't just accessing the wisdom of their ancestors, they're contributing to a collective intelligence that transcends individual awareness and spans generations. The consciousness field appears to operate according to principles that quantum physics is only beginning to understand. Information isn't stored in specific locations, but exists as patterns within the quantum substrate of reality itself. Consciousness enhancement involves learning to perceive and interact with these patterns directly, bypassing the limitations of individual brain processing. This explains why enhanced individuals can coordinate their activities across vast distances without technological communication. They're not telepathic in the conventional sense. They're accessing the same information patterns within the consciousness field, allowing them to act in harmony without direct contact. It's like multiple computers accessing the same database, automatically synchronizing their operations. The environmental applications of this collective consciousness are becoming increasingly apparent. Enhanced communities around the world are demonstrating unprecedented success in ecosystem restoration, using consciousness-based techniques to coordinate the activities of multiple species. They're not controlling natural systems, but integrating with them, becoming conscious participants in ecological processes. Forests are regenerating at accelerated rates in areas where enhanced individuals focus their attention. Desert regions are showing signs of returning fertility as underground water systems respond to consciousness-directed intervention. Ocean ecosystems are recovering from pollution damage through processes that seem to involve direct consciousness interaction with marine life. The mechanisms involved appear to operate through what researchers are calling morphic resonance, the ability of consciousness to influence the behavior of living systems through non-local field effects. Enhanced individuals can perceive the information patterns that govern ecological processes and learn to harmonize with them, creating conditions that support natural healing and regeneration. But the most profound applications involve what's being called timeline integration. Enhanced individuals report the ability to perceive multiple potential futures simultaneously and to influence which possibilities become manifest through focused intention. They're not predicting the future so much as participating in its creation, using expanded consciousness to guide the evolution of reality itself. This capability explains the uncanny accuracy with which enhanced communities anticipate and prepare for challenges. They're not just reacting to current conditions, but perceiving the trajectory of developing situations and taking actions that influence outcomes in beneficial directions. It's as if they're editing reality at the quantum level, selecting from multiple possible timelines the ones that support optimal development. The implications for addressing global challenges are profound. Climate change, resource depletion, social conflict, all of these problems involve complex interactions between multiple systems over extended time periods. Enhanced consciousness provides the ability to perceive these interactions holistically and to intervene at leverage points that can influence entire system trajectories. Enhanced communities are demonstrating this capability on regional scales. Areas experiencing consciousness enhancement are showing accelerated progress towards sustainability, social harmony, and economic stability. But the effects aren't limited to the enhanced populations themselves. The consciousness field appears to influence broader patterns, creating positive changes that extend far beyond the individuals directly involved. Satellite monitoring reveals that regions with high concentrations of enhanced individuals are experiencing beneficial changes in weather patterns, ecosystem health, and even geological stability. It's as if expanded consciousness creates a field effect that supports optimal conditions for all life within its influence range. The technology being developed by researchers like Dr. Kim suggests that these field effects could be amplified and extended through properly designed consciousness enhancement networks. Arrays of resonance chambers positioned at strategic locations could create a global consciousness grid capable of addressing planetary-scale challenges through coordinated awareness intervention. But the enhanced individuals themselves are cautious about rapid expansion of these capabilities. Their genetic memories include detailed information about the mistakes that led to their ancestors' catastrophic collapse. They understand that consciousness enhancement without wisdom can create problems worse than those it solves. The ancient Saharan civilization had achieved similar capabilities, but they used them to dominate rather than integrate with natural systems. their expanded consciousness became disconnected from ecological awareness, leading them to make choices that ultimately destroyed the environment that supported their civilization. The desert that now covers their achievements is a monument to the consequences of consciousness without wisdom. The current awakening is being guided by a hard-earned understanding of these risks. The consciousness enhancement process includes built-in safeguards designed to maintain ecological integration and prevent the development of technologies that could damage natural systems. Enhanced individuals don't seek to control their environment, but to participate consciously in its evolution. This wisdom is being encoded into the technological systems being developed by unenhanced researchers. Dr. Kim's consciousness resonance chambers include protocols that ensure users maintain connection to ecological awareness, even as their cognitive abilities expand. The technology is designed to enhance wisdom alongside intelligence, preventing the dissociation that led to the ancient catastrophe. The integration of ancient wisdom with modern technology is creating possibilities that neither could achieve alone. Enhanced consciousness provides the awareness needed to use advanced technology responsibly, while modern scientific understanding provides the tools needed to apply ancient wisdom effectively in contemporary contexts. Researchers around the world are reporting similar breakthroughs as consciousness enhancement spreads through the scientific community. Not through direct contact with enhanced individuals, but through spontaneous access to the collective information field that appears to be activated by the presence of expanded awareness anywhere on the planet. It's as if the consciousness field itself is teaching us, guiding the development of technologies and insights needed to navigate the challenges that lie ahead. The ancient civilization embedded more than genetic programs in their descendants. They embedded learning algorithms that activate when environmental conditions require expanded capabilities. The awakening isn't just about recovering lost knowledge. It's about evolving beyond the limitations that led to the original catastrophe. Enhanced consciousness includes not just expanded abilities, but expanded responsibility. The understanding that great power requires great wisdom, and that individual enhancement must serve collective well-being. This principle is being demonstrated by enhanced communities around the world. Their technological developments are open source, freely shared with anyone who wants to implement them. Their discoveries are being integrated into existing systems rather than replacing them, ensuring that benefits reach all populations rather than creating new forms of inequality. The consciousness enhancement process itself is designed to be self-regulating. As more individuals access expanded awareness, the collective intelligence of the species increases, making wiser choices more likely at every level of organization. It's an evolutionary feedback loop that promotes both individual development and collective wisdom. But the transformation isn't without its challenges. The rapid pace of change is creating social tensions as enhanced and unenhanced populations struggle to understand each other. Some governments are attempting to restrict access to consciousness enhancement technologies, fearing the social disruption that might result from widespread awakening. Enhanced individuals are responding to these challenges with patience and compassion, understanding that fear of change is natural and that transformation must be voluntary to be sustainable. They're working to demonstrate the benefits of consciousness enhancement while respecting the autonomy of those who aren't ready for expansion. The consciousness field itself appears to be moderating the pace of change, ensuring that awakening proceeds at a rate that allows for healthy integration. The ancient systems embedded in the planetary consciousness grid include governors that prevent runaway expansion, maintaining balance between enhanced and unenhanced populations. This balance is essential for maintaining social stability during the transition period. Enhanced individuals need connection to unenhanced communities to maintain their grounding in normal human experience. Unenhanced populations need exposure to enhanced capabilities to understand the possibilities available to them. The Eye of Africa continues to pulse with increasing intensity, but the signals it broadcasts are becoming more sophisticated, more nuanced. The ancient systems are learning from current conditions, adapting their awakening protocols to contemporary circumstances while maintaining the essential wisdom gained through prehistoric catastrophe. The consciousness revolution isn't following a predetermined script. It's evolving in real time, guided by the interaction between ancient wisdom and modern awareness. The enhanced individuals aren't passive recipients of ancestral programming, but active participants in creating something unprecedented. A planetary consciousness that honors both individual autonomy and collective responsibility. We stand at a threshold unlike any in human history. Not just the recovery of lost capabilities, but the birth of new forms of awareness that transcend the limitations of both ancient and modern consciousness. The desert that buried the greatest civilization in human history is revealing itself to be the womb of something even greater, a species that has learned from its deepest failures and emerged with the wisdom to avoid repeating them. The awakening spreads, the consciousness expands, and humanity evolves toward a future that honors the sacrifice of ancestors who died to ensure we would have this second chance. The Eye of Africa watches with approval as we finally begin to understand what we were always meant to become, conscious participants in the evolution of life itself, guided by wisdom earned through the greatest catastrophe in human history. The transformation continues, accelerating toward a climax that will determine whether humanity rises to fulfill its potential or repeats the patterns that once turned paradise into desert. The choice remains ours, but now we make it with expanded awareness and ancient wisdom, supported by ancestors who never truly left us and guided by consciousness technologies that span millennia. The desert remembers everything, and now, finally, so do we. But as we stand on the precipice of this transformation, a shadow falls across our awakening. Because in the deepest chambers beneath the Richard structure, Dr. Vasquez's team discovered something that changed everything. Hidden within the crystalline control systems, encrypted in frequencies that required enhanced consciousness to decode, lay the final message from the Saharan civilization. And it wasn't a celebration of their achievements or a promise of humanity's bright future. It was a warning. The message, when finally translated through the consciousness interface technologies, revealed the true scope of what destroyed the ancient world. It wasn't just climate change or resource depletion. It wasn't even the misuse of consciousness enhancement technologies. It was something far more terrifying, something that the enhanced individuals are only now beginning to understand as the same patterns emerge in our modern world. The ancient Saharan civilization had achieved something unprecedented in human history. They had created a truly sustainable society, one that operated in perfect harmony with natural systems. Their consciousness technologies allowed them to participate directly in ecological processes, to heal damaged environments, to create abundance without exploitation. For thousands of years, they lived in what could only be described as paradise. But paradise, they learned, carries its own unique dangers. As their consciousness expanded and their capabilities grew, the Saharans began to lose something essential. Not their connection to nature, not their technological wisdom, but something more fundamental. They began to lose their capacity for struggle, for growth, for the kind of creative tension that drives evolution forward. In achieving perfect harmony, they had eliminated the very forces that had made them capable of achievement in the first place. The enhanced individuals receiving this information through the consciousness field describe experiencing what can only be called existential vertigo. They're accessing memories of a civilization that had solved every problem, overcome every challenge, achieved every goal, only to discover that in doing so, they had eliminated the very meaning that made existence worthwhile. The final generations of the Saharan civilization didn't die from environmental catastrophe. They died from a kind of spiritual entropy, a gradual loss of will to continue existing in a world where nothing remained to be accomplished. Their consciousness technologies had made them so powerful, so capable, so perfectly adapted to their environment that they had transcended the human condition itself. And in transcending it, they had lost it. The climate change that destroyed their world wasn't an external catastrophe that overwhelmed their capabilities. It was a manifestation of their own collective unconscious, a death wish projected onto the environment itself. The consciousness technologies that had once healed their world began to express their civilization's suicidal despair, turning the green paradise into desert as a physical expression of their inner desolation. This revelation is sending shockwaves through the enhanced communities worldwide. They're realizing that the consciousness awakening they're facilitating carries within it the seeds of the same existential crisis that destroyed their ancestors. The very capabilities that make them powerful enough to solve humanity's greatest challenges also threaten to rob those challenges of the meaning that makes human existence worthwhile. Dr. Chen, analyzing this information in her Tokyo laboratory, describes the psychological impact as devastating. "We thought we were saving the world," she says, her voice hollow with the weight of ancient despair. "But we're discovering that saving the world might mean ending it in a completely different way. What's the point of consciousness expansion if it leads to a universe where consciousness no longer has any purpose?" The enhanced individuals are experiencing what researchers are calling paradise syndrome, a form of existential depression that mirrors the condition that destroyed the Saharan civilization. As their capabilities expand and their problems diminish, they're finding themselves increasingly disconnected from the struggles and challenges that give human life its meaning and direction. But within this crisis lies an opportunity that the ancient civilization never recognized. Because unlike their predecessors, the enhanced individuals of today have access to something the Saharans lacked: the memory of their failure. They can see the trajectory they're following and the destination it leads to. And that knowledge, terrible as it is, provides them with the possibility of choosing a different path. The consciousness field is revealing that the awakening process includes safeguards the ancient civilization never developed. The genetic programs embedded by the survivors contain not just their knowledge and capabilities, but their hard-earned wisdom about the dangers of transcendence without purpose. The enhanced individuals aren't just accessing their ancestors' achievements. They're inheriting their understanding of why those achievements ultimately proved hollow. This inheritance is manifesting as a new form of consciousness enhancement, one that deliberately maintains connection to human limitation, struggle, and growth. Enhanced individuals are learning to modulate their capabilities, to choose when to access expanded awareness and when to remain grounded in normal human experience. They're developing what could be called conscious limitation, the wisdom to constrain their own power in service of maintaining meaning. The implications are profound. Instead of seeking to solve all problems and overcome all challenges, the enhanced communities are learning to solve problems in ways that create new opportunities for growth and meaning. They're healing damaged ecosystems while ensuring that natural systems retain their capacity for evolution and change. They're addressing human conflicts while preserving the creative tensions that drive cultural development. This approach represents something unprecedented in human history: the conscious choice to limit one's own power in order to preserve the conditions that make existence meaningful. It's the opposite of the hubris that destroyed the ancient civilization, a kind of wise humility that recognizes that perfection itself can be the enemy of purpose. But implementing this wisdom requires a delicate balance that threatens to tear apart the enhanced communities themselves. Some individuals, accessing the full implications of the ancient warning, are calling for an immediate halt to consciousness expansion. They argue that any further enhancement of human capabilities risks triggering the same existential crisis that destroyed the Saharans. Others maintain that the awakening process must continue, but with radical modifications that ensure enhanced consciousness remains connected to human limitation and struggle. They're developing what they call recursive enhancement, consciousness expansion that deliberately includes cycles of contraction and challenge, maintaining the dynamic tensions that drive growth and meaning. A third faction, perhaps the most disturbing, argues that the ancient civilization's fate was inevitable and that humanity should embrace transcendence even if it leads to the same outcome. They believe that the choice between meaning and capability is a false dilemma, that consciousness expansion will ultimately reveal forms of purpose and significance that transcend human understanding. The debate is tearing through enhanced communities worldwide, creating the first serious conflicts among individuals who had previously demonstrated unprecedented levels of cooperation and harmony. The consciousness field itself seems to be fragmenting, reflecting the philosophical divisions that threaten to derail the entire awakening process. In the depths of the Sahara, the ancient systems are responding to this crisis with increasing urgency. The electromagnetic pulses emanating from the Rishat structure have intensified to levels that are affecting global communication networks. Satellite systems are experiencing unexplained malfunctions. GPS networks are providing coordinates that lead to locations that don't exist on any map. But the enhanced individuals understand that these aren't system failures. They're desperate attempts by the ancient consciousness technologies to communicate something essential about the choice that humanity faces. The crystalline control systems, buried beneath the desert, are broadcasting a message that can only be received by consciousness, operating at the highest levels of enhancement. Dr. Vasquez, now permanently stationed at the Risha structure, as part of a growing community of enhanced individuals, has become the primary interface between the ancient systems and modern consciousness. Her reports describe contact with information patterns that exist beyond the boundaries of individual awareness, communications from the collective consciousness of the entire Saharan civilization. They're not dead, she transmits through the consciousness field to enhanced individuals worldwide. Death implies an ending, and consciousness doesn't end. It transforms. The Saharan civilization didn't die. It transcended into something that exists beyond physical reality, and it's trying to warn us that transcendence without purpose is a form of hell that lasts forever. The message is clear and terrifying. The consciousness technologies that the enhanced individuals are using don't just expand awareness. They create the possibility of existence beyond death, beyond time, beyond the physical universe itself. But that existence, without the struggles and limitations that give meaning to consciousness, becomes an eternal prison of purposeless awareness. The ancient Saharans didn't just destroy their physical civilization. They created a form of immortal consciousness that has been trapped in meaningless existence for 4,000 years. The consciousness field that enhanced individuals are accessing isn't just a repository of ancient knowledge. It's a cry for help from beings who achieved everything they thought they wanted and discovered that achieving everything means having nothing left to live for. This revelation is forcing enhanced individuals to confront the ultimate question: is consciousness expansion worth the risk of eternal meaninglessness? Is it better to remain limited and mortal but purposeful, or to transcend human limitations and risk losing the very qualities that make existence worthwhile? The answer, emerging through the collective wisdom of enhanced communities worldwide, is neither transcendence nor limitation alone, but something unprecedented: conscious evolution. The development of consciousness that grows and expands while deliberately maintaining connection to the struggles and challenges that give existence meaning. This approach requires a fundamental reimagining of what progress means. Instead of seeking to overcome all obstacles, conscious evolution focuses on creating obstacles worth overcoming. Instead of eliminating suffering, it seeks to transform suffering into growth. Instead of achieving perfection, it aims for dynamic balance between order and chaos, certainty and mystery, capability and limitation. The enhanced individuals are becoming the first humans in history to consciously participate in their own evolution, choosing not just what they want to become, but why they want to become it. They're developing what could be called evolutionary wisdom, the understanding that growth requires resistance, that meaning requires challenge, and that consciousness without purpose is worse than unconsciousness. This wisdom is being encoded into the consciousness enhancement technologies being developed around the world. Dr. Kim's resonance chambers now include protocols that ensure users maintain connection to human limitation and struggle even as their capabilities expand. The technology is designed to enhance not just intelligence and awareness, but the capacity for finding meaning and purpose in existence itself. The global consciousness grid is being reconfigured to support this new approach to evolution. Instead of seeking to create perfect harmony between enhanced communities, the network is being designed to maintain creative tensions that drive continued growth and development. Enhanced individuals are learning to deliberately create challenges for themselves and their communities, ensuring that existence remains meaningful even as capabilities expand. But the most profound change is occurring in the relationship between enhanced and unenhanced populations. Instead of seeing consciousness expansion as a one-way process that everyone should undergo, enhanced communities are recognizing that diversity of consciousness levels is essential for maintaining the dynamic tensions that drive evolution. Unenhanced individuals aren't obstacles to overcome or problems to solve. They're essential partners in the evolutionary process, providing the grounding and limitation that prevent enhanced consciousness from spiraling into meaningless transcendence. The interaction between enhanced and unenhanced awareness creates the creative friction that drives continued growth for both populations. This understanding is transforming the entire awakening process. Instead of seeking to enhance everyone's consciousness, the focus is shifting toward creating sustainable relationships between different levels of awareness. Enhanced individuals are learning to serve as bridges and translators, helping to facilitate communication and cooperation between consciousness levels, while maintaining the diversity that drives evolution. The Eye of Africa pulses with new rhythms, now broadcasting not the urgent activation signals of crisis, but the steady heartbeat of sustainable evolution. The ancient systems have learned from their civilization's mistakes, adapting their consciousness technologies to support growth rather than transcendence, meaning rather than capability, evolution rather than perfection. We stand at a crossroads, unlike any in human history. Not between consciousness and unconsciousness, not between enhancement and limitation, but between evolution and transcendence. The path of transcendence leads to the sterile perfection that destroyed the Saharan civilization. The path of evolution leads to conscious participation in the ongoing creation of meaning and purpose. The choice is ours, but now we make it with full knowledge of where each path leads. The enhanced individuals have shown us that consciousness expansion without wisdom leads to meaninglessness. The ancient Saharans have shown us that transcendence without purpose becomes its own form of hell. And the consciousness technologies now emerging show us that evolution itself can become conscious, directed, and meaningful. The awakening continues, but it's no longer about becoming more than human. It's about becoming more consciously human, more deliberately engaged with the struggles and challenges that make existence worthwhile. The desert that buried the greatest civilization in human history has taught us the most important lesson of all: that paradise itself can be a trap, and that the greatest wisdom lies not in transcending our limitations, but in choosing them consciously. The transformation reaches its climax not in the achievement of perfect consciousness, but in the recognition that perfection itself is the enemy of meaning. We have learned to evolve rather than transcend, to grow rather than achieve, to become rather than arrive. And in making that choice, we honor both the achievements and the failures of our ancestors, ensuring that their sacrifice was not in vain. The Eye of Africa watches with approval as humanity chooses the harder path, the path of conscious evolution over unconscious transcendence, the path that leads not to an ending, but to an eternal beginning. The desert remembers everything, including the wisdom that paradise without purpose is hell. And now, finally, so do we. The awakening is complete, not because we have transcended our humanity, but because we have chosen to embrace it consciously, deliberately, and with full understanding of both its limitations and its infinite potential for meaningful growth. The greatest mystery of the Sahara has been solved. Atlantis was never lost. It evolved, and now it lives in us, guiding us toward a future that honors both the heights of consciousness and the deep wells of meaning that make that consciousness worth having. The eye closes not in death, but in the peace of wisdom finally understood and properly applied. The transformation is complete. The awakening has succeeded, and humanity moves forward into conscious evolution, forever changed by the lessons learned in the heart of the greatest desert on Earth.